afternoon, everyone. Welcome to my Instagram live show called The Third Phase. And I'm very excited about my guest today. Her name is Judith Taylor. Judith is an interior design business owner in the Greater Toronto, Canada area. So I'm very excited to have her here. Judith has really, I want to say, taken storytelling to a whole new level, talking about her illustrious family that are furniture manufacturers in Canada called the Krug family. And to everyone else that's joining us here today, I am Lori Carpenter, interior designer and founder of The Third Phase. And I want to thank our sponsor, and I happen to have Life Valet's Grab Bar. Life Valet is a manufacturer of these stunning grab bars, and I'm telling you, this is heavy. It is inlay ready. This is what they call their vibe. They have a vibe and harmony. This allows you to inlay whatever your shower surround is, whether it be marble, tile, whatever. You can put that in here. And look at this stunning grab bar. It looks more like a beautiful towel rack than a grab bar, but it is stunning. So be sure and check out the possibilities for your home at lifevalet.com, and be sure and follow them over on Instagram at lifevaletnw. So help me gather my friend on today, Judith Taylor. Let me see here. Hey. Well, hello there. How are you today?
How are you?
I am wonderful. It's wonderful to have you here. And I am so excited to share your everything about you. But you tell us about you. Tell us a little bit about your family, and how long ago was it that you lost your mother?
I lost my mom this summer. First of all, thank you for having me. It's nice to see you again.
Yes.
I lost my mom this summer, and it feels both like it happened yesterday and like it was an eternity ago. Time kind of warps when you go through something like that, and your priorities all pivot and get thrown up in the air. But yes, it was this summer, not
It
that long.
was this summer. Okay. Well, tell us a little bit about your family.
Okay. Well, my family, my mom's family, was part of a very large furniture operating factory business, actually. They ran for over 100 years. They were formed before Canada, just before Canada, the Confederation of Canada, and they employed in their heyday around up to as many as 600 people between
Oh, wow.
the woodlots that they owned and the sawmill where they harvested wood and they turned it into lumber to make the furniture. So it was a very large operation. It went on for many years, and I grew up going to the furniture show with my grandfather and going and touring the factory. So it was all very exciting for me. So when my mom died, it kind of marked the end of an era for our family also, because the business is closed, and mom was our last tie to the town and to the business. So I really felt it important to tell her story. And it was a unique upbringing because her father was also eight-term consecutive term mayor of the town. So where she
Wow.
grew up, everybody, she was conspicuous. She
Yes.
walked down the street, or she'd go into hated her, or they wanted to be her friend. But
Aw.
try and put in a good word for their parents who worked at the factory. So I decided I needed to tell her story. And I wrote it on my blog because it is an interior design blog, and I think it's relevant to the furniture industry. There are a lot of landmarks that my family did in terms of responsible reforestation and sustainable planting and harvesting way back in the 60s, 50s, and 60s, when it wasn't the politics of the time.
Wow. That is interesting. Um, how did this story impact you in your grieving process so far?
Well, It's funny. It wasn't really, it wasn't even a thoughtful process. I posted on Facebook an announcement that my mom had gone for family
Right,
touch. And in the very next breath, it was kind of an impulsive thing. I posted again. I said, stay tuned for the blog post, Growing Up Krug. I just always knew that I needed to write this story. I've written posts about Krug brothers and about the history, the 100-year history, and the book that's published about them. But I just knew that I needed to write my mom's story because she talked a lot about how growing up in that conspicuous way shaped her and how her parenting shaped her for life in a public eye. It was just, a small pond, but it was a very public life. So
right.
it was more that I wanted to memorialize her and the family in that way. I wasn't really thinking then about how healing it would be. Since then, I've come to appreciate that.
Well, I have heard of a lot of people doing that. I had a niece that she did that. She married my husband's nephew, and she blogged about losing her mother,
Mm,
and it was a great grieving process for her as well.
yeah.
Um, what has been the reaction so far to this blog post that you wrote about your mother and your family from, let's say, your friends and clients and
Uh, Surprisingly positive. It was
right?
internal thing that I needed to do. I wasn't really thinking about anybody anybody actually reading it. I wasn't seeing it that way. I just knew I had to put pen to paper or keyboard. Um, Although I have had a number of friends say they read it and they didn't really know because the family history is behind us now, but they didn't
Mm-hmm.
about the story. So I had a number of friends reach out and say they read it, and it is long. I go into a lot of detail, but and say how glad they were to have read the story. I also have some people saying, "Oh yeah, I better start writing." And in fact, I've got my husband writing right now because he has kind of an interesting story. And I told him you have to tell them about your first job out of grad school when you worked at the submarine base. I think that's going to be pretty interesting for your son to read someday. So once you start mining, you find all kinds of stuff. But yeah, the
Well,
reaction is good, and it's nice to hear other people are saying, "Yeah, I gotta write mine."
I agree. I really think storytelling is a way for grieving, but also to share things that um, about your family that no one knew. You know.
Yeah, yeah. I think, well, for me, like I said, there's a book published, so everybody knows that. But I wanted to write the personal story about how growing up in that environment shaped the person that my mom was, and that
Uh-huh.
speaks through to next generations too. How she,
What's the name of the book?
um, Century of Excellence is the Wow, I'm blanking on that. The sub the Century of Excellence, Krug Brothers. Oh, that's really bizarre.
Well, I would say anyone could Google Krug Brothers in Canada and find that.
All kinds of stuff. Yeah. Um, but just in terms of the healing process, because you spoke to that,
Hmm.
I think has been really helpful for me, and everybody's path is different through this, but when my mom was going, we were at the hospital for 7 weeks, 24/7, and all kinds of stuff goes sideways in the hospital.
Hmm.
All kinds of stuff. They mean that to do their best, but the trauma of those weeks is what lingered for a very long time. And I guess through thinking about it and talking to others and reading, I realized what was most important for me in the healing process was to go back and remember how my mom lived and kind of overwrite the memories of how she died. That's part of the story, but that was just the weeks. There were the 93 years before that. And that's what I really wanted to bring back into focus, just to sharpen that aperture on the memory of who she was during her days when she was alive and with us, not when she was a person in the hospital. That's not
Right.
how she'd want to be remembered. So it
Yeah,
was,
well, and that's just such a hard time, and it's hard on everyone
yeah.
dealing with it. It definitely is. What surprised you about the grieving process, and what uh, didn't you expect to feel or do? and how have you felt and have done since?
I was surprised by a few things. First of all, by how very different it was than when my father passed. I just, you think it's a thing you're going to feel, and we lost dad a few years back. We thought it would be the same, and it's really very different. It's different for each individual. We each experience it individually. I've talked to my siblings, my brother just a few days ago, and he said, it's different for each of us. But it's also different for each relationship that we're closing off. It is quite different with my mom than it was with my dad. Um, the other thing that surprised me is how very physical it is. You think that you're going to be sad and emotional, and to some extent, for me at least, numbness was what prevailed for a very long time. Just numb,
Right.
like unreal. Like I just can't quite grasp that this happened, so I'm just going to park it over there. But but it's very physical. I've been exhausted,
Yeah.
really very intensely tired, and it's like I kind of use the expression, it's like my brain is closed for renovations or has been for a little while. You've got to like refile all those memories and recategorize everything. It's like this little process that's going on in my brain. And it's very, very tiring. I also find that physically there's a heaviness. And I know when people write with heavy hearts, they share the news, which is what I had the words to say when I wrote about my mom. I didn't know what they meant until I went through it and I went, oh man, there's this massive weightiness. And I also feel that in my face. And I think that's probably, I don't know, all I can think is that's where we express a lot of our emotions. And
Right.
sometimes I think I'm just kind of feeling the weight because I don't want to feel that, or I'm not ready to, or it's not the right context. But yeah, I'm feeling it very physically. I spoke to somebody else, a grief counselor I'd been introduced to, and had lost her life partner. She said her hair all fell out. She said it manifests in very physical ways for many people. And I'm
Right.
really stunned like that. But yeah, it can be very physical.
Hmm. That's something that you don't always think about. But
Mm.
think about, in I still have my mother. My mother is 92,
Oh,
but
oh,
think
I,
about we've had our mothers all of our lives,
I know. I
and
know.
to lose them,
They're a part of us.
yeah, it's a part of you.
Yeah. Well, we're from them. And
Hmm.
many people think, well, it I was very close to my mom and very attached
Uh-huh.
to family, but some people, they're estranged from their mother, or they don't have that kind of relationship, and they think, well, it's not going to be the same for me. But the opposite can be true. You can, if you lose a parent where it was a troubled relationship, you also lose the hope that that's going to get repaired,
Yeah, that's true.
whereas you keep that alive when they're here. So
Hmm.
feeling like there are a lot of attachments that get broken when you lose someone. Like for me, that the attachment to our family heritage and to the town where they had the furniture factory and to the industry. But there are all these attachments. But with somebody that's estranged or troubled, it can be that loss of that hope that you will reconcile or you will have that conversation.
Right.
So
Right.
a word to go and
Right.
talk.
What have you done in addition to telling this story that's helped you cope with the grieving of your mother's loss, and how might that advice maybe help my third phase audience?
um Talking to people.
Talking.
Yeah, really connecting with it's remarkable. All of a sudden, I've had so many friends and colleagues lose their mother and
Mm-hmm.
reach out. And, some people haven't yet, but they know they have an aging mother and have reached out to say, do you want to talk? And it's just talking and connecting. It's a shared experience. We've all had parents at some point or loved ones that we've lost. And
Right.
it really helps to to rebuild. My next door neighbor just lost her mother about a month before I did. So we've had many afternoons where we sit in the front porch and just talk about it. But it's this kind of like it's a taboo topic for people who aren't there, but I don't think you need to be afraid to talk about it. It's part of our shared experience.
Well, it is part of our life. It's the circle of life,
Yeah,
for sure.
yeah.
But yes, it is something that you don't. Um, I know with my mother, occasionally, I'll say, "Now, Mom, what is something you definitely want done? What are your wishes? Things like that." And she is really very strong about talking about it. Where my grandmother was not. She would just say, "This is not doing me any good."
Yeah, yeah. A lot of people are really avoidant, and you know what? It is a comfort to know what your loved one's wishes are and that to know that you're honoring them. And in fact, we had found my mom had written notes about her childhood, about growing up in the pretty white stockings that her friend got to wear, but she was she had to be inconspicuous when she went to school, and she'd write about stories about going to school and how she was raised. Now I'm really glad we came across those. And I had recorded her also. I'd get out my phone when it wasn't easy to have conversation when she was more advanced in her aging. I would get out my phone and I'd get her to read her responses, and then I recorded it so that I would have her also telling those stories about growing up as a girl in the industry. And I'm really glad I have those. So we have the written record, and we also have my mom talking about her experience. So I can reconnect. It kind of keeps her alive for me when I can watch her on video talking. For some people, I don't know what your mother's stage is, but for my mom, generating conversation became very difficult. But reading, she was still able to read from her stories.
Ah.
So I still have it, what seems like a conversation with my mom when it's real. And sometimes she would free associate off of that.
Right, right. Well, that's interesting. My mother really doesn't want to read, so you never know.
No.
Now, you were talking a little bit earlier, and Leslie asked too, grief counseling. Did you had a grief counselor?
We were assigned someone. I was really surprised because I thought, well,
Um,
unexpected in the grand scheme of things. It's not like there was any great trauma. I think of it as something that's offered to somebody who's had a real severe trauma or something. But no, we were offered this, and I wasn't thinking about it. But a friend of mine who works in the oncology space and knows the
mhm.
organization well said, no, you are doing it. It's an exceptionally good program, and it's really good for you. And it actually has been. I was surprised because I was stuck in that denial phase for a little while. And then the visual I kept getting, I'm at the ocean right now. I've spent an awful lot of time at Cape Cod this summer, just kind of spending quiet time and remember.
Aw.
But I had this metaphor of the waves rolling over and then retreating, and those are the waves of emotion, and then it goes away, and then everything gets calm. But I also had this metaphor of like this visual of a chalkboard, where somebody would take out a piece of chalk and write on it, "Mom died," and then somebody would come along with one of those felt brushes and rub it off and go, "Oh no, that can't happen. That doesn't make any sense," and it would go back to normal. And then the chalk would come out again, and it would say, "Well, Mom died." And the brush would come out again. And then my friend said to me, "No, that's denial, dear. That's you're stuck." Oh, yeah, I guess it kind of is. It's me saying, no, that. So, so yeah, I did. They did a Zoom call where they walked through many different things we learned about grief. And the one that really lingered for me that's helpful is that there are two different words we use, grieving and mourning. And
Mhm.
I don't know if they're true definitions if you look them up, but their definition or understanding was grieving is, of course, the experiences that you feel for a loved one. But mourning is more of an active process of reconnecting with their memories and your connection with them, and giving it time and space. And not just waiting for all of a sudden a flood of tears to come, but just taking a moment. So I've really been, while I'm here at the Cape, taking my morning coffee, and I go and sit and look at the ocean and talk to Mom, and sometimes different feelings come, but I think that was a good separation for me, the difference between grieving and mourning, and really accepting the fact that it's helpful to make space. You can't push the feelings away. They're going to come out somewhere. So if
Mhm.
you give them and time, then they'll come out a little bit more on your terms. You don't have too much control over it, but you can try.
Well, that's wonderful. Losing our moms can be very, very hard, and especially when we've had a good relationship with them. What resources have you found out about and utilized besides storytelling that helped you?
Well, I've been listening to Anderson Cooper's podcast. I had been
Hmm.
listening for a long time. The one, it's called All There Is. All There Is, or is that all there is? I think, yes, that all there is. He started out with his podcast when his mother, Gloria Vanderbilt, died. And he was
Hmm.
going through things in the condo and in the basement, boxes and boxes and boxes, because she kept everything. And, sort of his metaphor was, is that all there is? This is what I'm left with, all this stuff. And how does he sort through it? And how does he deal with his feelings around the loss of his mother? And he had lost his brother and his father, both much earlier in life.
Hmm.
And gone on to interview an awful lot of people. Sometimes people who've just called in and left a message, and shares a lot of pearls there. The most recent one I listened to, he just interviewed Ken Burns, but prior to that, he interviewed Luke Bryant, and that one was really interesting. He has lost a couple of siblings, and it's just I find it's, again, it's about the conversation. It's helpful to hear other people who have gone through this, and through that shared experience, you realize you'll get through this.
Yeah.
Others, you will too. And it's just by sharing it that we sort of just hold each other's hands and walk forward. That's what we're going
Yes. I like that we hold hands and walk forward.
to. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It's tough.
Any books? Is there any books that that you would recommend that maybe you've read?
I haven't. I haven't done any reading like that really. But when you say books, the one thing that comes to mind, because not everybody has grandchildren or children or whatever, but I know that when my mom was much younger, and when my years ago with my grandmother, there are published books called grandmother's books, something,
Yeah.
but it's a book of questions. And
Yes. They're stories. Yeah.
yeah, question, it's like to invite your parent or your grandparent to tell the stories that the children will wish they had asked.
Yeah.
And just to give some framework, because I think of questions that you wouldn't have thought of, because I think a lot of us are at a time where our parents grew up in a very different time.
Very different.
And I think it's interesting to pass on that message for our children and grandchildren and family members to think back on how life has changed and how it stays the same. And I loved hearing stories about, my father grew up on a farm in Manitoba where they didn't have electricity, let alone television and telephone and internet,
Right.
all of that.
Right.
And the arc of his life took him to a very responsible position with the Ontario government in Queen's Park, and it's that arc that makes the story. And I know I've been talking about my story, and it is a little bit of an illustrious story in the furniture industry, but any story, once you start digging in, it gets fascinating.
It does.
It
It
really,
truly, truly does. Is there anything else you would like to share that maybe we haven't covered?
just get out your pen and paper or your phone and press record, and don't wait to make it formal. Just grab it when somebody's talking at the dinner table. Or I recorded my husband when we were on the interstate so many times this summer, driving down to the Cape. So we're in the car for 12 hours. So I asked him stories about some of his travels in his earlier years. But don't wait for that special moment. Just get your phone out. Say, hey, mom, what was your favorite thing to do when you were a little girl? Or dad, what was
Yeah.
it like? What was it like when you didn't have internet? What did you do?
Yeah. That is fabulous. Now, tell us, where can we read your blog post?
Oh, well,
Where is it at?
it's on my website, judithtaylourdesigns.ca.
CA. Okay.
Under my
All
blog
right.
post about growing up Krug,
Uh-huh.
talking about a place at the table, which they would have built. And there are also a blog post or two about Krug Brothers on my blog, on my blog as well.
Well, wonderful, wonderful. Well, we will share that. For everyone that is a member of my Facebook group called The Third Phase, I send out a newsletter every Thursday after kind of a recap of what we talked about. So I'll be sure and share all that out there on that newsletter. So,
Thank you. It's long and there are some kind of personal stories. I maybe should have added, I know I should have added it out. Fashion and circumcising the baby on the ironing board. Um,
mhm.
but if that doesn't pique your interest, I don't know what will.
I was going to say, ooh. Well, we will have to. We'll have to read that. Well,
Yeah,
listen, thank you so much for being on my show today. I really appreciate it, and how important storytelling can help us through our grief.
yeah.
That's something people don't always think of.
Thank
But
you.
thank you for sharing this.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I think these are important conversations you're having over here on your feed.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I've just, again, it's nobody gave us a book, instructions on how to handle this third phase. And
No, no.
I have learned so much just from my Instagram lives from people like you that share this wealth of information that can help all of us.
Yeah, yeah, we do it together.
Yep, we do it together. We walk together.
We do.
Well, Judith, thank you so much. And coming to us from Canada, what's your time
I'm an
difference?
hour later.
Just an hour.
So,
Okay. Okay.
yeah,
Very good.
thank you.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us. And everyone else, I'll see you next Tuesday. Thank
Bye.
you. Bye bye.